Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On this episode, we talk with Holley Tyng, who is the head coach at the women's ice hockey program at Colby College. We discuss her playing Division I hockey with vision in only one eye, her role with USA Hockey Development Camps, and go deep on Colby College's women's ice hockey program. I really enjoyed this conversation with Holley, and I hope you do too. Before we get to our guest, if you enjoyed this episode and want us to keep making more of them, please share it with teammates and friends. You can also subscribe, like, follow, and even better, it would be great if you would leave us a review. Now, let's drop the puck and get to the show. I'm very excited to have on the Champs App podcast, Holley Tyng, who is the head coach at Colby College. Originally from East Orleans, Massachusetts, she attended Tabor Academy for prep school before studying at Providence College and playing 4 years at defense for the Friars. After graduation, Holley returned to Tabor Academy as head coach of the girls program for 3 years before making the move to the Ivy League, where she was assistant and associate coach at Dartmouth for 11 years. In 2016, Holley became the head coach at the Division III program at Colby College, where she was the 2020 NESCAC Coach of the Year. Welcome to the podcast, Holley.
Thanks, Ray. It's great to be here.
Awesome to have you. And like we do all our guests, if we can start off with how did you get into the great game of hockey, and tell us about your hockey history?
Yeah. Well, I started out figure skating because back in, late 80s, girls didn't really play hockey. And so I was a figure skater, always wanted a pair of hockey skates, finally convinced my parents that they should buy hockey skates for their daughter. And I never looked back once I did convince my dad. I actually think I grew up in a small town, and somebody saw him at the local sports store on Christmas Eve, literally at 5 o'clock, right before the place was closing up, and he was buying his daughter her first pair of skates. So again, the rest was history. Once I got the skates, I did.
Did you have any siblings that played hockey?
No, just my dad. I have an older
Okay.
sister, and she actually was a very good figure skater herself, in tennis and soccer. And so, my hockey passion really did come from my dad, and growing up just a huge Bruins fan. So I got those skates, and then I convinced him to let me play in the house league, which was great. And then from there, I tried out for the squirt team, boys team, got dressed in the first aid room, would go down to the locker room for the little pregame talk. And, my passion and love for hockey really just grew from there. So.
And who are your biggest influences, to become, the hockey player that you did as a kid?
Yeah. Again, I would attribute a lot of it to my dad. Very good family friends of ours, who he and I left to go to Tabor the same year. Matt Perrin. Matt grew up in Orleans, and he was a really good hockey player. And so his dad was a big supporter of me playing hockey. And I think actually his dad might have helped convince my parents to let me play. But I definitely, I just loved hockey. So I would say my dad, Matt, I went to, my dad actually went to Tabor. And so when I got going with hockey, we would travel around to different prep schools and watch different games. And Annie Kamens was a player who was at Tabor when I was looking at the school. She grew up in the Chicago area and currently I think works for the Blackhawks. And I just remember watching Annie play, and I was like, gosh, I want to be just like her. And then my knowledge of hockey, and women's hockey just kind of grew from there. So, obviously Providence College with the alumni that they have and some of the more prominent names. It was fun to watch and be a part of the women's game as it really grew and took off. And my opportunity to go to Tabor was huge for me. So
it wasn't very far from home. I went and looked at the map today, and I realized you haven't traveled very far in your hockey career. So
I haven't. I'm a homebody for sure. Family is really important to me, and so. I actually was choosing between Providence and St. Lawrence. And I think that drive, and being that far from home was a factor for me. Providence was obviously a lot closer. And if you leave my parents' house and drive to Tabor, it's about 55 minutes. So during high school, my mom could do my laundry, come up on a Wednesday, do laundry, and come back on Saturday. So I was totally spoiled in that regard. But literally that drive, and then you go another 45 minutes and you're at Providence College. So
Exactly.
that drive was really familiar for my folks when I was playing.
Okay, so before we get to Providence, let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about Tabor Academy. So why did you decide to, pursue a prep school, the prep school option, and how important was that in your hockey development?
Yeah. Oh, it was hugely important. I think that was the launch pad for me to play college hockey, obviously. I wanted to, again, I played boys. I played 2 years of squirt, and I think either a year or two of peewees when we could check at the peewee level at that point. And the boys were growing, obviously, really quickly, and I was not. And so I think both my parents, were really supportive of me making that transition to play girls hockey. Growing up on Cape Cod, the closest girls program was the Chelmsford Lions, which was Paul Kennedy at the time. And it was a 3-hour drive from home. So, going to Tabor made obviously a lot more sense. The fact that my dad was an alum was obviously a big push for me to go to Tabor, and just to have, to play on a girls team and be able to experience, getting dressed in the same locker room as your teammates and, travel and all of that. It just, it made so much sense. So yeah, I was really fortunate, grades 9 through 12 to be able to attend Tabor and be part of a great program there. And obviously it's home, Tabor is really home for me.
So how did you tell us about the recruiting process with Providence, and like you said that you all also looked at St. Lawrence. So what was the process like for you getting recruited back then?
Yeah, I was really fortunate that one of my classmates at Tabor was Jessica Tabb, who was a fabulous player. So I think and Jess was probably one of the most heavily recruited players in our grad year in the New England area. So I think we were fortunate. We had a lot of coaches come and watch us play. And that really benefited, I think that really benefited me for sure. I think back then too, there were fewer scholarships out there. I wasn't a scholarship player. I was one of those players who had to be a little bit more proactive with my process even then. And so, I knew I wanted a smaller school. And again, the location was obviously really important to me. Close to home was important, and just the opportunity to have an impact on the team. And so I was really, really lucky. Jackie Bardo was the head coach at Providence when I was looking to go there. And I had a fabulous coach of mine at Tabor, actually, who was a Providence alum. And so I remember she brought me down and I got to meet with Jackie, go through the locker room, tour campus, the whole 9 yards. And that was really, that was really special. The crazy coincidental part about my time looking at Providence and why I felt like it was a really good fit, obviously size, location, the ability to play was really good for me. But I wrote my college essay for my application on a quote. And sure enough, when I was touring in the locker room, that quote was written on the door. And so it immediately,
What was
I
the
was
quote?
like, okay,
What was the quote? I'm sure you know it off by
this is
heart.
a sign. Oh gosh, I knew you were going to ask me that as I started talking about it. I actually don't remember. It was a Lou Holtz quote though. And it talked about attitude and work ethic and something else. I can't remember exactly. I'll have to come back and find it for you at some point and follow up with it. So yeah, it was about, believing in yourself and things like that.
So I don't normally do inserts in the middle of a podcast, but Holley sent me the Lou Holtz quote, so I thought I would share it. Ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it. All right, now back to Holley. You had at least a couple of former podcast guests here who are also teammates of yours, who've also gone on to coaching. So Katie LaChapelle, who's at Holy Cross and also the under-18 coach, Kirsten Matthews, who was also on the podcast and now as an associate coach who used to coach against in the NESCAC when she was at St. Anselm. And then also Mel Ruzzi, I believe, who was a teammate of yours in your senior year, who went from Princeton, I think, to, where's she at? Brown?
She's, just got named the head coach at Brown.
Exactly. So you were kind of surrounded by some great leaders, obviously, and
Totally.
And what role do they play in kind of as teammates of yours while you were at Providence?
Yeah, you got to add in Meredith Roth, who is at Holy Cross working with Katie, and she might complete the Providence coaching circuit for the podcast. And I add Meredith in, she's one of my very best friends, and was a huge, I don't know, she was, even though she was younger than me at Providence, Mare and her passion for hockey and now passion for coaching. She's one of my favorite people to kind of bounce ideas off of and share things with. So You got to complete the Providence circuit with Meredith on the podcast.
My apologies, Meredith.
No, that's okay. But those guys, Katie LaChapelle, I'll just start out with. She was a captain, when she was assistant captain my freshman year, and then captain my senior year, or my sophomore year, her senior year. And I lived with Katie for a year as well. And she's always just been, I think our values align, just personally and within coaching. And Katie is just one of the best people around. Her hockey knowledge speaks for itself, and her experience, obviously, at BU and Holy Cross, and certainly within USA Hockey, is incredible. But she's one of my favorite people in the world. Like, she, as a teammate and just as a coach and as a friend, she's somebody that I really look up to. So she was a great mentor for me, even as an upperclassman on the team. Kirsten and I were line mates, I think, actually. So I know you said I played D for 4 years. I actually only played D for 2. I played forward for my junior and sophomore seasons.
I will get your elite prospects profile updated based on that.
That's okay.
All right, thank you.
I bounced around, and a little bit of that came with coaching changes, right? So when Jackie was there, I played defense, and then when Bob Duraney stepped in, he said, "Hey, we could really use you up front." And so I had never really played forward before, but I was okay with doing what was best for the team, obviously. And I cameoed at forward for about 1.5 years, and then I finished out my senior season back on the blue line. So,
and if memory serves me correctly, Katie also played both forward and defense. So Katie
was a very versatile player. She also played field hockey,
yes,
which is a little known fact, and she was a fabulous field hockey player too. She's obviously a great athlete. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, so Kirst was great too. And then, I had the opportunity to, be a leader on the team when both Mel and Meredith were at Providence, and talk about, and that was also when Bob Duraney started, bringing in his players, and, great thing for the culture at Providence. Both Mel and Meredith's classes were both very strong players and great people too. So.
Gotcha. All right. I got a question for you that's a little bit personal in nature. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you face some challenges in terms of physically how you play hockey. You want to share that with folks?
Sure. Yeah. I am blind in my right eye, which is, I think when you, certainly my friends in the coaching world know, because oftentimes if I'm standing on the glass or I'm in the stands and I can't totally see a jersey number or a certain player, I'm not shy to ask, hey, is that number, 6? Is that number 7? What number is that kid? And so I rely on my friends, and I always have. But yeah, I was born with cataracts on both my eyes. And when I was born in 1979, cataract removal surgery wasn't as routine as it is now. And so my doctor, I still see the same doctor that I did when I was 8 months old. So that's pretty cool. She decided to take the cataract off of my right eye because I had some other complications with my right eye. And so they removed it, but they left the cataract on my good eye, my left eye. And I didn't have that cataract removed until after college. So I played my college career blind in my right eye and a cataract on my left eye. And to this day, I think hockey is really unique in that the puck is black and the ice is white. And so the contrast, I think, really did help me see the puck a little bit better. But there still are times where I have no idea where the puck is. And, you learn the play off the puck. If players are angling in a certain way or, heading into the corner, I have a good idea. Obviously, the puck's there. And so I think I learned the game a little bit differently in that regard. I always, and still, again, to this day, struggle when the puck leaves the ice surface, because that contrast is hard. And I still joke with Katie and a couple other teammates, Brown. So the kick plates, the plastic around the perimeter of the rink, Brown University has red kick plates, or they always used to. I don't know what they currently are, but that contrast when the puck was on the wall at Brown, I always really struggled with that. A yellow or a light blue kick plate seems to be a little bit easier for me to track the puck on. So, it was the only way I knew. I grew up, playing sports. My eye doctors told me I probably wouldn't ever play sports or ever drive. And I seem to be doing both just fine, which is good. So
that's an incredible story.
Yeah, again, it's just the way I don't know any different, basically, or I didn't know different back then. But I did get the cataract on my good eye removed after college, and I'll never forget that same eye doctor said, you'll go from seeing a bird to realizing birds have feathers. And it really was and has been that profound. There are a few things like playing golf or even going to watch the Red Sox, like I can see the ball and I never used to be able to. And so those are little reminders, you know, where it's fun to say, hey, I can actually see these things now. So it's me, it's who I am. My assistant coaches know that sometimes I miss calls because or miss plays because I don't, you know, totally see them that well, but I've managed to, you know, to kind of figure it out. My equipment manager at Dartmouth, I used to coach the forwards when I was there, and matching lines, if the benches were across the arena from one another and I couldn't totally see who was up next, or if there was a key player I needed to know, you know, hey, when is so-and-so going to be coming up? Where is she on the bench? My equipment manager, he would always stand next to me, and he would sort of help and be my eyes in that regard too. So.
Wow. Okay, that's an amazing story. I could actually ask a whole bunch more questions about it, but I'm only going to ask one question related to this, which is, what was the advantage that you had because of your eyesight that made you actually a better player as a result of it?
I think just seeing the play, the whole play, you know what I mean? Like I talked about maybe not knowing where the puck was. I was never, you know, sort of puck focused, I guess, when I played. I had to scan the ice. I had to be aware of, you know, where players were. I think when you talk about having your head on a swivel in the D zone, as a defenseman, I mean, I was constantly checking my surroundings and having, I think, a really good awareness of where people and players were, because I had to, you know, I couldn't rely on peripheral vision on my right side. And so I really did have to have really, really good awareness and a really active head on the swivel in the D zone. And Meredith will attest to this. We always talked about being each other's eyes. When Mare and I played defense together for my senior season in her freshman year, she was a fabulous communicator. And I think that really helped me, you know, big time too. So my teammates, I think my teammates were wonderfully supportive. My coaches were very supportive. And I definitely relied on them big time.
Gotcha. Have you ever met Willie O'Ree, who I believe also had a
No,
similar
yeah,
challenge?
he's blind in one eye as well.
Yeah.
And obviously a Bruins legend. I
Yeah.
would love to meet him someday. Brian Leach for the Rangers. I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah,
or
sure.
was it? No, Brian Berard played for the
Oh,
Rangers.
yes, for the Islanders. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he is a Rhode Island guy too. And I remember he lost vision in one of his eyes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's once again turn to the positive. What's your
Sure.
favorite youth hockey memory? Just in general, as a female player in either squirts, peewees, at the prep school. What's your favorite youth hockey memory that you have?
Yeah. Well, I would have to mention the year, my freshman year at Tabor, we went undefeated and won the New England championship, which was very cool, obviously.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. But I think, gosh, there's so many, even just from getting off the bus with some of my teammates that I, grew up playing squirt and peewee hockey with, and getting off the bus and having our parents meet us there with our skates and being able to skate on the ponds and, play just to play, which was really, really fun. So, I feel like it's across the spectrum. I don't know how I would pick just one memory, but, those times on the pond or, winning a New England championship at Tabor. We went head to head with Taft. Taft hadn't lost. They had AJ and Wink Malesko, and they hadn't lost in like 3 years. And all of a sudden the Tabor team came in, and we had Allie Brewer in net, who was the first goalie to win the Patty Cash. She went to Brown, and a whole host of great players. And we had a really good, really successful year that year. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, now looking back on your entire hockey career, which includes Providence, what would you do differently in terms of, as a player, in terms of either development or choices you made, things like that?
Sure. Gosh, that's a hard one. I think like I was the kid who shot a million pucks in the basement. I convinced my dad to paint, a goal crease down there and a red line so that I had some, kind of spatial awareness and put a net down in that goal crease and stuff. But, I think if I was going to do anything different, I would just have done a little bit more of that. My shooting was pretty good. I probably could have stick handled a little bit more growing up to help with my hands, but I don't have a lot of regrets. And I think that's also, how I try to go about my life. I try to take control of what I can control and do what I can, and try not to look in the rearview mirror too much. But, I think convincing my parents to buy me skates when I did was obviously pretty timely. And that really, I have so much to thank for that one decision that they made. So it's really obviously, and my dad, he and I still to this day look back on that time. And I think my mom was the harder one to convince, but I'll never forget. Once I did get those skates, I walked in their bedroom, and on her bedside table, she had checked out. My mom owned a nursery school. And so she was a teacher at heart. And she had checked out a couple library books on hockey, the rules of hockey and where all the equipment goes and so on and so forth. So I think once we convinced my mom, I think we were golden. But the decision for them to get me skates has obviously just provided such an amazing path and passion for me. And obviously now I'm still in hockey, and I'm so lucky.
So let's talk about that. So you decided immediately after graduation, pretty much, to get into coaching, and you went back to your prep school, to Tabor Academy. So talk about getting into coaching, why, and then and the journey.
I'm glad you said almost immediately, because what probably doesn't show up in my bio is that I worked for State Street Bank for about 9 months right after I graduated. Yep. Yeah. I was a mutual fund accountant. So I was a math and business major at Providence. And I knew I always wanted to get into coaching. But, I wanted to move to the city and spend time with my college friends. And that, again, it was very short-lived. I almost feel like I needed to do that to prove to myself that I really did want to go into coaching. But I did, I went through with my training program at State Street, and I worked. I lived in Boston. I had an apartment, all that good stuff. And then in the spring, one of my former dorm parents and, connections, one of my great mentors at Tabor, called me up and said, "Hey, we're going to be looking for a hockey coach. Are you interested?" And obviously, I think I turned in my resignation at State Street that day. Took the summer off and got ready to go back to Tabor. And I taught, like I said, I was a math major, so I taught algebra and geometry, and I coached everything. I coached soccer, softball. I did obviously hockey. I did think I did some conditioning and stuff like that too. And then I got to live in the dorm and be a dorm parent. So the teaching part was a little bit new to me, but again, it was awesome. I loved it. I loved my 3 years back at Tabor. And the hardest part in transitioning back there was having to call some of my former teachers by their first name and not, Mr. and Mrs. So
you feel that being a teacher actually helped you on the coaching side of things, because it's a very similar type of
1000%
skills that you need. Yeah,
exactly. And I think the most, relatable is that I would sit at home and I would make a lesson plan to teach factoring, and maybe of my 15 kids in the class, maybe 10 of them would understand, but then 5 of them wouldn't. And you have to think on your feet and figure out, okay, how are they going to understand factoring? And so it's the same with forecheck. You might have a plan in terms of how you're going to teach your forecheck, and some kids are going to get it and some kids aren't. And so you have to, find new ways to try to connect with them. And, some are visual learners, some need to do it. And I think I learned a lot of that in those years at Tabor for sure.
Gotcha. And how did you end up at Dartmouth?
Gosh, well, I grew up going to the Dartmouth elite hockey camp, which was the highlight of my summer every year. 1 week in August, and I would go and I got to play hockey and meet so many great players. Like Julie Chu was at the Dartmouth camp. I think it was like everybody, who was growing up playing hockey would go to that Dartmouth camp in the summer. And so I loved Dartmouth and just obviously loved the community. And so Ted Wisner, who is the assistant up at St. Lawrence right now, yep, Ted and I spent my first year at Tabor. Ted and I were co-coaches, or he was the head coach. I was his assistant, but I worked with him that first year back at Tabor. And he was very friendly with Mark Hudak, who I worked for at Tabor. And so when I was looking at the preps, or making the jump from the prep school world to the college world, I had reached out to Ted and I just said, "Hey, can you put a good word in for me at Dartmouth?" And he picked up the phone. He's like, "You want that job?" And I said, "Yeah, I want that job. It's Dartmouth, it's an amazing program." And he made a couple calls to Mark, and I went up and had, a great connection with Mark right off the bat. And 11 years later, it was crazy. It was a lot of time and a lot of just amazing relationships and incredible players that I had the opportunity to work with.
Gotcha. So 11 years,
Yeah.
Ivy League.
Yeah.
What made you want to be a head coach and go Division III?
Oh, well, again, I think I was ready to be a head coach. I probably was ready maybe after 7 or 8 years, but I couldn't leave. It was such a great community and such a great program to be a part of. Mark decided to step down after, after my 11th year. Mark stepped down as head coach, and then, it's sort of wiped the slate clean in terms of what I was going to do and where I was looking. And to be very honest with you, I hadn't really found anything in the coaching world after my time at Dartmouth and before I started at Colby. And I was really lucky when the Colby job opened up in September. I didn't have anything, keeping me where I was. And so it was late, obviously in the process. I started at Colby a month before my season started. But I think I was in a really good place to be able to up and leave and move to Maine. And my sister and brother-in-law are Colby alums. And so obviously I had some familiarity with, with the school, with the NESCAC, and the NESCAC is it's the best Division III women's hockey conference in the, in the country. And so what a great opportunity for me. And again, just very fortunate that the timing of everything worked out.
It's interesting hearing your story that everything has a connection together, right? Tabor Academy because your dad, Providence because, you had a previous player on your team. Then, you keep going back to Tabor, then to Dartmouth, now to Colby. So before we get into diving deep on Colby, you and I met at a USA Hockey event as you were at the Pacific District. So maybe talk about your role with USA Hockey over the years, and especially this year, because you were very busy with USA Hockey over the summer.
For sure, yeah. I've loved all of my time with USA Hockey. When I was at Dartmouth, every year, they put out the application to work their development camps in St. Cloud, and actually they used to be in Rochester, and so. I've been involved in those, those camps for many years. I've served as, an assistant coach, a head coach, a skills coach, an on-ice director. And then, this year, I think because of the Division I coaches not being able to leave their campus to go out and do events, the opportunity for me to go out to the Pacific District and be the lead evaluator was. I feel like it sort of fell in my lap, and actually I think it was Mel Ruzzi who put me in touch with Kathy, who is kind of running the Pacific District. So a good connection there, obviously, with a former teammate. And so Kathy reached out, said, "Hey, can you come out? Will you do this?" And it was an awesome opportunity. And again, it was that first, sort of first opportunity to watch live hockey after watching on, live stream for most of the year. So that made it an even better event. And just to be back in a rink with, colleagues and coaching friends was really special too. So
And sorry, just so folks know, you're referring to Kathy McGarrigle, who runs the Pacific District for USA Hockey. So just so folks know.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyways, went out there, got to evaluate all 3 age groups and look at our selections to send to from the Pacific District to send to the development camps. Really incredible opportunity. Kristen Wright with USA Hockey was out there as well. And so it was a great opportunity for me to, work with her and again, the hockey world is so small. Whenever you have the opportunity to, to go and showcase your work ethic, to showcase, who you are as a person. I love doing camps and things like that because, we get to obviously promote our program, but at the same time, we get to learn from our, coaching peers and I don't know, you just get to talk hockey and it's always really fun. So that was a cool opportunity.
Yeah, when I've gone to these USA Hockey events, I watch who talks to each other, and then I try and figure out what the connection is. And I go, oh, now it all makes sense, right? But 98% are pretty obvious to figure out. Somehow they either coach together, or they played together, or they've done USA Hockey coach together type of thing. So,
yes.
Can I ask you a few USA Hockey questions, because I've had a whole bunch of parents come up to me and ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. So I thought I would ask you that. So the first is, did you evaluate more than just the Pacific District, or did you go to other districts as well?
I did. Yep. I worked Massachusetts and New England this year as well. So I did Pacific, Mass, and New England. Yeah.
Gotcha. And how do you calibrate between those divisions? Sorry, the districts, because you know, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know a parent who said, well, I wish my kid, you know, went straight to the under 18s camp, you know, and didn't have to go an alternate route. And we're going, well, okay, they were in a district that really probably didn't have a lot of great players there, so it may have been hard to calibrate. So can you tell me how that all works and how they decide who goes to the 15s, who goes to the 16s, 17s, and who goes straight to the under 18s?
Yeah, you know, I can't, there are some of those questions that I can't answer because that's out of my, that's above me, obviously. So,
okay, no, I'm trying to get Kristen on the podcast, so that's fine.
Yeah,
no problem,
that would be
understood.
a great question for Kristen. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can say, you know, when you like, for me, even, you know, watching Pacific and then watching the New Englands and then watching Mass, this year was also hard too, because there were a lot of Mass and New England players who had waivers because of prep schools. Right. And so, that was another whole, you know, sort of, tricky element to the process.
Can you just explain what waivers mean due to prep school?
In that they maybe didn't have to go to every step of the tryout, because if they had left their prep school, they might not be able to go back to their prep school and finish out their academic year. So, and again, that's another part to the process that I'm not 1,000%, you know, confident talking about. But I did know that, you know, at the Massachusetts district, there weren't, some of the top players were not there because of, you know, prep school, COVID guidelines and things like that. So it's a challenge though, without a doubt, you know, watching players in Pacific, and trying to compare them, you know, to Mass, to New England, and not knowing, you know, Minnesota, right? Like there's obviously a massive district. And so,
and a lot of really good hockey players in Minnesota.
Yep. And so I think, you know, I think this would be maybe in Kristen's wheelhouse, Kristen Wright's wheelhouse, but how they figure out, you know, the allotments from different districts and who goes to what camp and so on and so forth. Our job and my job, again, specifically when I was at the Pacific District, was just to identify, if she said, okay, hey, we need 4 forwards, to identify who those 4 forwards were. It wasn't necessarily to compare those players to Massachusetts or New England. It was just really trying to find those best players at that specific regional tryout. So
gotcha. And were you recommending, let's say from the 16-17s group, were you recommending them to go to the 18s, or you were just ranking them or rating them accordingly to and let USA Hockey decide who goes straight to the 18s versus the 16-17s?
More of the latter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just rating them and then let them decide. Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. So how much of this summer does this USA Hockey stuff take up? Because I believe you also went to the actual under 18s camp with your former teammate, Katie LaChapelle.
Exactly. So for me, again, I left Pacific District in May. I did the Mass weekend in May, and then I did the New England weekend in May as well. So those were 3 weekends in May that I was working with USA Hockey. And then I think from my experience at Pacific with Kristen Wright, she asked me to be the lead evaluator during the 16-17 camp in St. Cloud. So again, in a similar fashion where I was watching everybody during 16-17, I got to work with Katie LaChapelle, Chelsea Walkland, and Mel Ruzzi, who are the U18 staff, and I got to help coordinate the meetings during the 16-17 camp. So each of the camp teams and their head coaches, we would meet regularly during the week and talk about, you know, I would ask each coach, you know, who do they recommend that Katie and her staff, you know, bring to the select camp in July. So that was an incredible opportunity, obviously, you know, and again, to be able to watch, you know, sometimes when you're at those camps, you work specifically with one team, and then you try your best. Obviously, when you take off your USA hockey hat and you put on your college coaching hat, you know, you do your best to try to watch all the games. I didn't have that challenge this year. I just got to sit in the rink and watch hockey the whole time, which was obviously pretty fun. So, so that was 16-17s in June, and then Kristen asked me to be a camp coach during the U18 festival in August. So I wasn't back in St. Cloud for the select camp July, like Losh and her staff were. So they spent definitely more time than I did, but I got to go back to Minnesota this time in Blaine and work again as a camp coach during the U18 festival, which was just an unbelievable opportunity. So again, it's Katie, her staff, and then myself and another camp coach who we were on the ice for all practices. We were on the bench for all the games and scrimmages, which was, really, really cool. And we did the U18 scrimmaged, the U23 team in Blaine twice. And those games I got to evaluate from up above. And we were talking about this during the 10 days we were there. The perspective that you have on the bench is obviously really different from the perspective that you have when you sit in the, in the stands and watch. And so it was great throughout the week. You got to know the players. And then those last 2 games I got to watch from up top, and you just pick up on some different things. And again, just to have access to, the other coaches that are there. Like I love learning, Losh's language and how she teaches different things. And it's certainly stuff that I'll bring back, to the Colby program. And for me, just to have, Division III program represented at that level is for me, it shows that they have a lot of respect for what I'm doing here, which I'm obviously incredibly proud of. And Kristen Wright and Katie LaChapelle are 100%, who I need to thank for that opportunity. So it's been awesome.
That's a full cycle from, watching, the 15s at the Pacific camp all the way through to watching the 23s at the national camp in August. So that's pretty,
Yes.
The full range of players that you got to see, a full spectrum. So
Lots of great hockey.
So now once that was all done, you need to then go back and focus on Colby. So before we get into what you did this summer with your staff, let's just talk about just Colby College. So it's based in Waterville, Maine. It's
Yep.
a small liberal arts college with about 2,000 students. Maybe just talk about the school and then maybe some of your facilities, especially your upgraded facilities,
sure.
and some of the academics of the school.
Yeah. So Colby is, again, in Waterville, Maine. It's the type of students and student athletes that we attract are, obviously, again, being part of the NESCAC is known as, the small Ivies or small Ivies. And so my transition from Dartmouth to Colby was incredibly smooth, just given my background there. And so the type of student athletes that we're looking to attract at Colby are, very academically driven, but also very, very serious about their athletics as well. They're very well-rounded, really balanced, down-to-earth student athletes. I think that's one of the things that I love the most about Colby. The setting of the college is obviously in Maine. So we have skiing, we have hiking, we have canoeing and kayaking. We have Acadia National Park. The LL Bean headquarters are right here. I mean, it's just, the location is awesome for an outdoorsy and very active type of student. Again, I think, that within my program and the type of player that we're now attracting compared to when I first started here, it's a lot of the players are really passionate about their development. They're very passionate about improving as individuals, but also, trying to win together as a team. And I've been really lucky to be obviously very well supported here at Colby in terms of our recruiting. And we, at the start of the school year last year, even in a COVID year, we got to open up our new athletic center, which is 350,000 square feet of just incredible, incredible space for our students and our athletes. It's been described by a lot of people as a Disney World for athletes, and it really is just that. So,
how was that able to come together? Because as a small liberal arts college, but when I looked it up, did my little research, you guys have like $1 billion endowment, and I'm sure you have a bunch of alumni who are really into sports. So how did that all come together, if you're familiar with that?
Yeah, well, from attending the the soft opening that we had for the facility last fall, David Green, who's the president of the college, he's the one that was the big driver in all of this, and I think what I know about David is he's a doer. He's moving and he's progressing forward even in a pandemic. And what he has done for Colby, and specifically Colby athletics, is just incredible. he values our athletics program here at Colby, you know, and I think that that's one of the things that I love the most about working here is that we have a president of the college who sees, you know, sees value in, you know, that out of classroom education as well. He's a huge hockey fan, so I think that helps us as well. Both Blaze
Nice.
McDonald, our men's staff, men's head coach, and I always say that we're just so lucky that, you know, the president of the college really, you know, he's a huge supporter of athletics and specifically hockey. So that's pretty cool.
Talk about the Jack Kelly rink.
Yeah. So it's getting painted actually right now, which is exciting for the school year. Jack Kelly's name will be, you know, painted onto in the neutral zone in front of both benches. So that's obviously really special. It's an incredible facility. And again, you know, we got to practice there every day last year, which was really special for our players. We played 2 games. One was home. We got the first win in the new arena as the women's team, and we got the last one in our old one. So that was pretty special too for the team. So
that was against Southern Maine. Am I correct on that?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Those are your only 2 games that you played last season, unfortunately. We'll get into that in a second. But well, related to that, since you only played 2 games last year, maybe this is a good time to just talk about how COVID impacted your season last year and kind of how that then translates into, you know, the new world order that we have coming up for this year.
For sure. You know, I think again, as I just said, we were really lucky. We were here, first of all, you know, and I think again, David Green and what he did for the college, you know, during the pandemic COVID year, we invested in a ton of testing. We, you know, have the benefit of being in a not a, you know, big city, obviously, you know, we're here in Maine and you know, fortunately for us, the cases in our area were, you know, not what they would have been in Boston or, you know, a bigger city. And so we decided at Colby and our leaders obviously decided to bring the, you know, the whole community back and we just cranked away on testing. And we're really lucky in that, you know, again, we were able to practice. So we were able to, you know, be in the new facility. We obviously masked, you know, constantly and did a lot, you know, distanced, did a lot over Zoom, but we, you know, we were here, we were developing our skills, we were coming together closer as a team. And I think that's one of the things that's going to really help us going into this season. And that, you know, I know throughout the course of the year last year, my players would say, Coach, if we can get through this, we can get through just about anything, you know, and they were really tested and we relied on each other. We went through a lot together as a team, and one of our team core values is family. And I think that was, you know, that was a big one for us last year, and that we were, you know, able to support one another and, you know, in a way that was really just different than any other way that we had supported each other prior. So that's the silver lining for me, I think, for our program. You know, we certainly worked, you know, we got better last year. We got stronger in the weight room. We worked on our skills on the ice. We competed, we did a 3-on-3 cross ice series, which got heated, and it was just so much fun. The girls loved that. So, and then we actually scrimmaged with the men's program. We did a combined scrimmage, men's and women, which was really cool. My goalies played the whole games, which was fabulous to see them, you know, making glove saves and great, you know, just great interactions with the men's program. And again, I think the relationship that we have with them is really special. And so, you know, again, we made progress last year, and I think that we have a lot of that to build upon this coming year.
Gotcha. And you have a new addition to the Colby family. When I originally reached out to you to be part of the podcast, you said, hey, I need to hire an assistant coach first. And then, you know, after I do that, then I can come on the podcast. Well, you've now hired an assistant coach, and I actually saw both of you when I was in Boston for the NAHA showcase.
Yes.
You want to talk about hiring Olivia Soares, who is a recent grad from Ohio State?
Incredible. I hit a grand slam in hiring Liv, for sure. She has big shoes to fill. Justin Simpson was my assistant for 2 years. He left just prior to the COVID year, and then I had actually 2 of my former captains were back as my assistants last year. So, you know, again, it's a great honor having Liv be a part of this program. She obviously has a great career at Ohio State and a captain and helped Ohio State capture their first ever WCHA championship, you know, and that's at the forefront of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to capture our first NESCAC championship at Colby, and to have Liv in her experience, you know, she's obviously younger and she's very relatable for my student athletes. you know, she was an incredible student at Ohio State as well, just got her master's. So, you know, I think she embodies that balance between academics and athletics that I really, you know, I want our student athletes to, you know, to strive for excellence in both of those areas. And I think, you know, she lives that, she is that, and that's who she is. And to have her as a coach and a leader, mentor for my student athletes, I think is just, like I said, it's a grand slam. So.
And you pretty much put her to work right away, right after the announcement. You know, was when I saw you two out recruiting and or at least scouting.
I didn't put her to work. She asked to be there, and so I had told her. I said, "Let's just make sure you know transition back home." And she said, "Can I come to the rink?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Well, that's probably what you want to hear, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why you hired her. All right. So so let's just talk. Let's talk about Division I versus Division III recruiting and what's similar and what's different between the two. And then I got more detailed questions to get into after that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, the timing and when and again, my Division I experience was prior to the new rules, you know, kind of kicking into place. So I haven't operated at the Division I level with the new recruiting rules and the, you know, sort of delayed and pushback communication. When I left Division I, you know, we were on the phone with 9th graders, you know, 10th graders, and I didn't love that. I think it's obviously scaled back now and a little bit more balanced. But what I do really like at the Division III level is, you know, the contact and the touch points happen when the players are obviously a little bit older and a little bit more mature, and when they should be going through the process and communicating with coaches. And so,
so how does that work in terms of like what is it you're waiting for, you know, for players? Like are there some that are like very clearly want to play Division III for maybe they want to play multiple sports or, you know, financial reasons, whatever it is that they want to go straight to Division III, or mostly are you waiting to see who ends up you know, deciding that Division I isn't going to happen for them?
That's again more of the latter.
Okay.
You know, my goal is to recruit players who can play at the Division I level as well. I want those types of players. And so I try to be a little bit more patient because, you know, it's especially this year with, you know, players being granted that extra year of eligibility and the, you know, the graduate transfers that we're seeing at the Division I level. There are fewer spots, obviously, you know, at the D1 level this year, and it'll probably be for the next couple of years. You know, so that has obviously a, you know, kind of trickle down effect for us. And so trying to be patient, trying to see, you know, who are those kids who are kind of holding out for D1, and I'm going to lose some. I lost 2 that went to a Division I school just this week, you know, and I can't fault them for that. I obviously am very supportive. I know what that dream and that passion is like to play Division I hockey. And so I have to be supportive of that. But my hope is that I get, you know, some of those other kids, some of those kids who maybe don't have the opportunity to play Division I and that will come here and have a Division I experience. You know, my experience prior to Colby has all been Division I. And so I run the program exactly, you know, the way we ran it at Dartmouth and exactly how, you know, it was run when I was at Providence. And still having a lot of good friends at the Division I level, I get to, you know, hear what they're doing and how they're, you know, again, how they're running their programs. And that's, you know, that's what we do here. So,
I got a question. So I was speaking to a dad a couple of weeks ago who has a 2022 daughter who has at least one Division III offer, but she's been telling that school, "Hey, I really want to play Division I. You need to wait, basically." So how do you handle that situation when there's a player you're interested, you've made an offer to, but they're basically saying, you know, you're really not my first choice. Division I is.
Try not to take it personally. I remind myself of that all the time. But again, I also remind myself of those are the kids that I want. And again, I'm going to win some and I'm going to lose some. And I think just being realistic about that, you know, for me, I like to be in the mix in that situation. You know what I mean? That means I'm recruiting the right type of player, the player who wants that Division I experience, who's talented or, you know, believes that they're talented to play at that level. So yeah, you know, I'm fine being patient in that regard. You know, I don't know, I can't speak for other coaches. But I think, you know, again, I remind myself it's not personal. You know, if they choose to go D1, it's good for them. I
And
have,
what's your pitch to them as to why it would actually be a better choice for them to come to Division 3 than Division 1? And an example would be ice time.
oh, for sure. Experience, impact. What do you want your role to be? You know, do you want to be in the stands? Do you want to be, you know, working your way into the lineup, or do you want to come into the lineup and have an immediate impact? You know, do you want to be a driver of our culture? Do you want to try to win a championship, you know, or do you want to go to a team that's, you know, trying to qualify for playoffs? You know, it's what do you want your experience to be? And so that, you know, it's black and white. I mean, you're not going to be an impact player at the Division 1 level and an impact player at the D3 level. That you're either going to be an impact at the D1 level, or you're going to be a very average role player at the Division 1 level, you know, and an impact at the Division 3 level. So I think it is, you know, it's what they want their experience to be. Some kids are totally fine, you know, working their way into the lineup at the Division 1 level because it's Division 1.
Gotcha. And are there other reasons why they would go Division 3? It could be playing multiple sports. It could be academics. It could be, you know, areas of interest, location.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, again, that I love about Colby is that balance of, you know, your academics, your athletics. Certainly there's no school or program that's going to prepare you better for life after college, I think, than a school like Colby and a program like ours. So it's you know, I think I'm going to have 4 this year who play multiple sports on my roster. So 2 field hockey, a softball, and lacrosse. And so that certainly, I think, is a driver, you know, for some of my athletes as well, is that they can play and impact multiple teams on campus. So.
Nice. All right. So when I went to your team's website, there was no schedule yet for this coming season. So what are the plans for this coming season?
Well, we do have a schedule. It's just not released yet, probably. Our roster is probably still the roster from last year. So that'll all get updated, obviously, as the school year kicks off. But, you know, the plan for this year, I think, is it's interesting. I feel like after last year, we just, all of us in the NESCAC and probably a lot of teams in the country, I feel like we just start with a clean slate. You know, our 19-20 season was an incredible season for the program, but to me, that's such a thing in the past. You know, we can't hang our hat on that year. We have to really, you know, start to create a similar culture and a similar standard, just in terms of how we're going to do things. And again, I think we sort of have the opportunity to, you know, sort of start clean here. Obviously, coming off last year gives us I think we start a little bit ahead of some of our competitors, but you know, we got to get back to basics in terms of how we play and really focus on our culture. We do that every year. Spend a lot of time, you know, working on our values, working on our connection with one another, and working on our, you know, unfortunately we don't have to work on this one that much, but sort of sparking that passion to be on the ice and developing and getting better and coming together as a team. So
nice. All right, so
yeah,
I do have one more technical recruiting rule question for you. Division 3 schools, are you able to talk to any player at any time, or do you have to follow the same rules as Division 1 of waiting until the June 15th of at the end of their, I guess would be their sophomore year?
Yeah, so Division 3 will be conference by conference. There's no blanket Division 3 rule like there is at the Division 1 level. So it varies a little bit. You know, what Tim at Elmira can do is different than what I can do. And so in the NESCAC, we can, you know, I can reach out to a student athlete at any time. I don't have to wait until after their junior year. We're a little bit more restricted in terms of when we can do overnights and things like that. But as far as communications go and in person at an event, we have to wait for that player to be done like within their day. So I don't have to wait until the end of a tournament to talk to a player. I can wait until they're released at the end of, you know, the day on a Saturday and meet with them at the, you know, once they're done with their games for that day. So it's, you know, there's little innuendos within each conference, and each one is going to be a little bit different at the Division 3 level. So.
Okay, that's good to know. But if you want to, people can reach out to you right away then if they wanted to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, so but again, because our recruiting, it's just it happens later. I almost laugh when I get emails from a 24 or a 25 right now. It's like, what are you doing? You know, just be a kid. play, focus on, your school and getting better. And don't worry about me at this point. But yes, I can reach out to them if I wanted to.
Gotcha. And I believe you do have a questionnaire on your website,
Yes.
just like almost all the other schools. So if folks did want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, I think submitting that questionnaire is huge for a lot of us. I know there are some recruiting services and things out there that players can use, but it's getting their information in our database is actually the key piece, right? And so submitting those questionnaires gets them specifically to Colby women's hockey. At Colby, we're also really lucky because it syncs to our admissions office. And so
Nice.
when you submit your questionnaire for hockey, you're also going to get looped into, our admissions mailings and things like that. Again, those scouting services and things like that are great, but it's much easier if you input it, on the school's website. Email is definitely the best. Again, I do try to reply to almost all. I'm not timely in that, but I do try to reply to as many and almost all emails as I can, just to acknowledge that I've received it. I'm a firm believer if they take the time to email me, I want to take the time to email them back.
Gotcha. All right, last question. So what advice do you have for players who are like 2022s or 2023s as they're looking at their options, especially with all the complexity going on with the recruiting these days, especially at the Division I level? What advice do you have for these players?
Yeah, I think it'd be twofold. One is be proactive, take control of your process. I think sometimes kids will wait, to get a call or to get the emails, and it's, you've got to be proactive. You got to take control, of your process. And I think one of the other really important things to remember is try not to compare yourself to your teammates or to others. I think that's a really easy thing for us to do. And I know parents do it too. It's like, oh, well, my kid is doing this or this kid's doing that, so my kid has to do that. It's different for everybody. The process is going to be unique. It's going to be subjective. There's obviously your play is a factor, your position is a factor, your academics are a factor, financials can be a factor, depending on what type of schools you're looking at. And so no two kids and no two families are going to be the same. And so really I think we can go down a slippery slope when we try to, compare ourselves to teammates and to others. Run your own race. And I borrow that, little piece of advice from Lee J. Marisolo at Harvard. She, used that at one point this summer. And it's so true. You have to run your own race. You have to, kind of do what you can do for yourself. And just, again, be really proactive, put yourself out there. It's almost like a job interview. You're going to reach out, you're going to express interest. Don't have your parents do it. I don't want to hear from parents. I want to hear from the players. So, try not to compare yourself, try to take control of what you can, and try to be patient. I think this is obviously it's a challenging time. And the players, I think, are, antsy. They want to, they want to have a decision. They want to, kind of move forward in the process. And I think for us as coaches, and I think I alluded to this, to you back earlier in the summer, we're playing catch up too. They feel like they're playing catch up as players and putting themselves out there. But as coaches, we're playing catch up as well. We spent this whole summer going out on the road and trying to see players play in person for the first time in a long time. And I know I felt behind at the start of the recruiting year, and so I'm still doing my homework. There are players that, I talk to right now and I still say, hey, I still need to see you play, and it's just because we just didn't have the opportunity to go to nationals. We didn't have the opportunity to, do stuff at the end of the season last year. So it's a unique time. We can all find a silver lining in it, and I think I hope they'll be tested and hopefully they'll be resilient and they'll be able to build some strength, knowing that they've gone through the process and they've done what they can. So
awesome. That's some great advice. Well, Holley, I want to thank you so much. It's not easy. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Champs App podcast. It was great to hear about Colby College, hear about your experience with USA Hockey, and then obviously your advice on figuring out this whole recruiting process as kids are navigating both the Division I and the Division III options that they might have.
For sure. It really is my pleasure. I love talking about Colby. I love talking about our program, and certainly going back and thinking back to my own my own path in hockey is obviously really fun to sit and reflect on. So I really appreciate you asking me to be on this and giving me the opportunity to talk more about my program.
I really want to thank Holley for joining me on the podcast. It was great to hear about her playing at Providence College, her being a scout with USA Hockey, and of course, her sharing her insights about Division III hockey. And remember, if you got something out of today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, follow, subscribe, and even better, if you could leave us a review so we can keep sharing this important hockey information with folks just like you.